Well, Telstra says its $11 billion deal with NBN Co, bit of an understatement here, is an important milestone. The same cautious wording it used a year ago when the original heads of agreement was signed. But there are still plenty of hoops to jump through, including a shareholder vote in October and ACCC approval. And if the investor reaction this week was anything to go by, that might be a tough sell for the company. I spoke to Telstra's Chief Executive, David Thodey, on Friday, the day after the agreement was announced. Well, David Thodey, it's been a pretty unusual negotiation in that you started with the number of $11 billion last year, a year ago, and spent 12 months basically working out how to get there. Is that a fair comment?
No, Alan, no, I don't think it is. Remember, a year and about 4 days, we announced a financial heads of agreement which was $11 billion approximately NPV post-tax. Now, since then, there has been a lot of negotiation, and we're still saying approximately $11 billion post-tax NPV. So, no, it wasn't a calculated outcome. It's just been the way it's worked. And you could see within the construct of the deal, the infrastructure component and the payment for the migration of the customers has slightly changed. But no, it's not been a...
It's a fantastic coincidence then, shall we say?
Oh, look, yeah, I think it is. I mean, yes, we've known what value we could accept, but I don't think it's fair to say it's a manufactured outcome.
Now, obviously, the NPV, or the net present value, is not the actual cash you'll receive. I asked a friend who understands spreadsheets to work out from the information provided what the cash that you will receive over 10 and 30 years will be. He tells me it's around about $750 million a year for each of the infrastructure and the decommissioning components, or around about $1.5 billion a year in cash, adding up to $30 billion over the time. Does that sound about right to you?
Well, the calculation's different for each component of the deal, Alan. Remember, you've got the infrastructure component, which we ramp up in the first 3.5 years. Then there's that payment out over the remainder of the term, which is 35 years. Then you also have the payments as customers migrate from the copper to the fibre, and that's over the 10-year period. But yes, what you should do is you've got to take the post-tax number, take it to a pre-tax number, gross it up, and then spread it over a period. And it's a significant amount of money.
So the question, I guess, is how do you know that's a good deal when you don't know how much you're going to have to pay the NBN to use the network?
Well, we do know the base price we'll be paying for a service, which is the $24. And yes, there is a usage fee that NBN will charge, but also there's a retail cost on top of that wholesale price. So we've done our modelling and we've looked at what we think the demand will be in the market, and we can get a pretty good approximation of what we will be paying NBN during that period. So no, it's a pretty good calculation.
What do you think it'll be?
The
amount
price we'll pay to NBN?
The amount you pay NBN.
Well, as I said, it depends on you've got the base component, $24, then you've got the number of customers migrating over the 10-year period. We've done assumptions on what we think the demand and the usage component of that will be. So it actually ramps over the period up to a higher number. But no, we've not disclosed exactly what that number is.
So what happens if there's a change of government in 2013?
Well, like all these things, I mean, policies come and go. Governments come and go, and what we've tried to do is to make sure we have enough contingency in the event of any change of policy, or there may be a change of strategy from NBN in terms of the technology they roll out. So we've been very specific. We've said, well, firstly, there's a natural hedge, because if anything stops, we still retain the customers on the copper network. So that's a natural hedge. Secondly, we've put in place this threshold. Once you get to 20% of passing homes, there's a $500 million payment if anything should stop, and then it just ramps down over the period to the end of the NBN rollout. And then lastly, the infrastructure contract is like any commercial contract, 35-year contract in this instance, where if they were to stop it, they have to pay out the leases. So there's a lot of natural and contractual commitments in this arrangement.
It's a 35-year lease, is it?
35-year lease, yep.
Right, so they've got to pay out the whole 35 years?
Absolutely.
Right. Now, the deal also prevents you from promoting wireless as an alternative to the NBN, but there's nothing I could read in there that prevented you from or prescribed how you priced the wireless. So presumably you could use the wireless to undercut the NBN as long as you were quiet about it.
Well, I want to be very clear about this. The only constraint we have is to directly promote wireless instead of the NBN fixed broadband. So that's very, very specific. I mean, our intent is to get a customer to migrate and use the NBN fixed broadband and to take wireless. The only constraint, and it's a very, very minor constraint, is to directly put a little pamphlet in someone's house that says, do not buy NBN fixed broadband, buy our wireless broadband instead. That's the only constraint. We will be promoting our wonderful NextG wireless network, which, as you know, is going to a LTE spectrum band, 80 megabits per second, and we will be promoting that product very, very strongly. It is only a very limited constraint of a direct substitution for NBN fixed broadband, so I don't think it's an issue at all.
So will you price it as an alternative to the NBN?
We'll continue to be very competitive as we go forward, as we have always been, and we'll be selling that product based on its value and the tremendous flexibility it gives our customers.
Now, just back to the cash that you'll be receiving. I mean, you know, whatever the actual number is, it's quite a large number, as we were saying. It's going to make you the richest, in cash terms, media company in this country, I'd suggest, by quite a long way. What are you going to do with the money?
Well, I think that you're sort of getting at a very good point, Alan. We are going to enjoy some very rich cash flows over the next period. And I think this creates an incredible opportunity for the company to reorientate itself for the next 20 years. And that's what we will be doing. We've already been very clear about our strategy, about continuing to drive real value from our core telecommunications services here in Australia. You've seen us invest $800 million, or announced we're going to invest $800 million in the cloud computing area. Also, we're rolling out those new products in the small business area, digital business, nearly $500 million over the next 4 years. We'll be coming out with new products for the home. You've already seen the IPTV product. Foxtel will be available on IPTV. So we are ramping up enormously a whole new raft of products and services that we think will be of enormous value.
You could go on an absolute acquisition rampage if you wanted to.
Never a rampage, Alan, but definitely we have options, and we have real capital management options. We could look at our dividend policy, we could look at a buyback program, or we can look at expanding our business. So for the first time in this company's history, we have real optionality going forward, which we are very excited about.
Would you consider selling the infrastructure income stream? I mean, it's a very interesting and valuable asset for a superannuation fund. 30-year or 35-year income streams like that are very rare. They'd probably pay quite a lot for it.
Yes, that's true, Alan. They probably would. At the moment, we have not directly considered that, but we will always look at all options as we go forward.
I'd say you get about $8 to $10 billion for it. Do you think that's right?
I haven't done the numbers, Alan.
If you did sell it, you'd have to give the money back to shareholders, wouldn't you?
Oh, look, I think that we would always and always have, right through our history, always considered our shareholders. That's why we've had such a strong dividend policy, and I think we've been very conscious of our retail shareholder base and about how important that dividend is to them. So we'll always be mindful of our shareholders.
The agreement provides that you have to use the NBN exclusively for 20 years. Now, obviously, in 20 years' time, you won't be around, but do you think that there will be, or that Telstra is likely at that point to be thinking about using some other network, perhaps even going back to the HFC network?
Well, you're absolutely right, Alan. I don't plan to be around in 20 years' time, but one thing I can tell you is technologies change, and that's the wonderful thing about this industry. That we've seen for many, many decades. So there will be options going forward. So yes, you can be absolutely assured that Telstra will be looking at every option that we can put to market that's going to improve the way people live and work. And that's what we've always done, and we will continue to do that going forward.
Thanks very much for joining us, David Thodey.
Thank you, Alan.